Ah, yes, the Black Dinner, a truly terrifying tale that has endured for hundreds of years. In 1440, there was a feast held in Edinburgh Castle to celebrate the betrothal of two young nobles, William Douglas, the 6th Earl of Douglas, and Elizabeth, the daughter of the Earl of Home. The event was well attended by Scotland's elite, including 8 powerful chieftains. However, one important guest did not attend: King James II. All conversation ceased, and a hush fell over the crowd as they watched the bizarre entry. Then began the most gruesome part of the night. Others who tried to hide were hunted down and brought to the great hall where Douglas had set up a makeshift guillotine. You see, the Scottish nobility had grown tired of the young king and his advisors running the country. They wanted someone else to take the throne, and they believed that William Douglas, with his family ties to the royal family and his military prowess, was the perfect candidate. They also resented the English influence at court, and Douglas, who had spent time in England, was seen as a symbol of that influence. So they hatched a plan to get rid of the king and put Douglas in his place. The problem was how to get rid of the king without causing a war with England. At the time, Scotland was in a fragile peace with England, and starting a war would have been disastrous. But Douglas came up with a solution. He would kill the king's son and present him to the nobles as the new king. This would cause a succession crisis and throw Scotland into chaos, but it would not be seen as a casus belli, a just cause for war by the English. Unfortunately for Douglas, his plan did not go as smoothly as he had hoped. The nobles saw through his deception and fled, and then he was executed for his crimes. This, too, was part of his plan. To ensure that no one would escape, he had even bribed some of the castle guards to help him carry out his bloody rampage. In the end, 7 of the 8 chieftains lost their lives. Only one, Thomas Boyd, escaped by hiding under a woman's skirt. According to an eyewitness, Sir John Fastolf, after the king's son was placed on a nearby high chair, Douglas stripped off the child's outer clothing, revealing a nightshirt underneath. This was no ordinary nightshirt. It was covered with spikes and as sharp as any dagger. The story of an innocent child murdered by a power-hungry noble appealed to the Victorian sense of morality, and the mystery surrounding Douglas as motives and the lack of historical records about the event added to its allure. Today, it is remembered as one of Scotland's most infamous historical events and is often used to explore themes of power, corruption, and the abuse of authority. And as if that wasn't enough, Douglas then pulled a hood over the child's head, which also had spikes that could rip out anyone's eyes who dared come too close. With the spiked nightshirt and hood on, Douglas then presented the prince to the assembled guests and announced, "My lords, here is your king." The lords were horrified. They looked at the child, then at Douglas, utterly confused. What was the meaning of this macabre display? Hadn't the king been invited? Why was his 2-year-old son being paraded around in a spiked nightshirt? Before anyone could figure it out, however, Douglas repeated his announcement, "Here is your king," and then drew his sword. The lords, realizing the gravity of the situation, fled in terror, stumbling over one another in their haste to escape. Some jumped out of windows, while others ran through the castle, desperately trying to find a way out. As they ran, they could hear the sound of Douglas's booming laughter echoing through the halls. He had planned this carefully and had blocked off all exits from the castle. There was no escaping him. He sent his 2-year-old son, the Prince of Scotland, James, Duke of Rothesay, in his place. Little James was an innocent child who had no idea what was about to transpire. The celebration was in full swing when suddenly William Douglas entered the Queen's hall with the 2-year-old prince in his arms. Those who jumped from the windows were killed by the soldiers waiting below to catch them. But why? Why did Douglas do such a thing? However, the story of the Black Dinner has survived through the centuries because it contained elements that made it appealing to later audiences. Thank you for watching.